My name is Joe Morgan, and for as long as I can remember, I lived in the shadow of my brother, Mark. He was the golden child, the one everyone praised, admired, and trusted without question. At family dinners, our parents hung on his every word, while I barely got noticed. If I achieved something, it was brushed aside. If Mark so much as lifted a finger, he was celebrated like a king. Before I tell you how I got my revenge, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. So when Mark announced he was getting married to a woman named Claire, the whole family lit up. They treated her like royalty from the very first day she walked through the door. She was beautiful, polished, and spoke sweet words that made everyone adore her instantly. Everyone except me. Something about her smile felt rehearsed, like she was playing a role. I watched the way her eyes shifted when people weren't looking. I noticed how she avoided certain questions about her past. Small details most ignored, I kept in mind. When I tried to voice my unease, my parents scolded me. "Stop being jealous of your brother's happiness," they said. But deep inside, I knew something wasn't right. And I would be the only one who saw it. From the beginning, Claire had a way of capturing every room she walked into. At dinners, she charmed my parents with compliments about the food, the house, and even the family history. My mother blushed at her flattery, while my father laughed louder at her jokes than he had at mine in years. Mark beamed beside her, proud that he had found someone so perfect. He repeated the word often, like he wanted to remind me of it. "Joe, isn't she perfect?" he asked one evening, his arm draped around her shoulders. I forced a smile, though inside, unease twisted my gut. Love revenge stories? Subscribe now. We drop new ones every day, raw, emotional, and full of justice. Don't miss the next chapter. The more Claire shined, the more invisible I became. Relatives called me lucky to have a sister-in-law like her. They said she was the best thing to ever happen to our family. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something about her didn't fit. Her eyes lingered too long on Mark's bank statements. Her smile tightened whenever money was mentioned. When I mentioned it, Mark snapped. "You're bitter, Joe. You've always been bitter." Claire touched his hand gently, acting the victim, and everyone sided with her. Perfect bride, perfect lies. And I was the only one who could see the cracks. The first time I noticed something truly off was at a family brunch. Claire's phone buzzed, and she quickly silenced it, her face pale for a second before her smile returned. I caught a glimpse of the caller ID, an unknown number, but the way she reacted told me it wasn't just a friend. Later that day, I saw her slip into the study while everyone was outside. Curious, I followed quietly. She was rifling through my father's desk drawers, scanning papers like she was searching for something. Before I could speak, she closed the drawer and turned around, her smile snapping back in place. "Looking for something?" I asked. She tilted her head, unbothered. "Just a pen." Then she brushed past me. That night, I tried to tell Mark what I saw. He laughed in my face. "Stop inventing stories, Joe. You hate that I'm happy." Claire appeared behind him, wide-eyed and hurt, like I had attacked her personally. Our parents shook their heads, disappointed. "Jealousy doesn't look good on you," my mother warned. I wanted to shout, to force them to see what I saw. But instead, I stayed silent, knowing my words would only dig me deeper. As weeks passed, I gathered more reasons to worry. Claire took late-night phone calls in hushed tones, her voice sharp, nothing like the sweet tone she used at the table. Once, I overheard her whispering about transfers and timelines. When she noticed me nearby, she slammed the door shut. I went to Mark again, this time serious. "Listen to me, something isn't right with her. She's hiding things." Mark's face darkened. "You're obsessed, Joe. You can't stand that I found someone better than you ever could." His words cut deep. "Better? Was this what he thought of me all along? Claire slipped into the room, feigning hurt. She clung to Mark's arm, her eyes glistening. Why do you hate me, Joe? I only want to be part of this family. And once again, the family believed her. At dinner that evening, my father put his fork down and glared. This is your last warning. Stop trying to ruin your brother's happiness. My mother added, we raised you better than this. I sat there, silent, my warnings dismissed as bitterness. Claire smiled across the table, victorious. No one could see it yet, but I knew the storm was coming. The wedding rehearsal was supposed to be a celebration, a final practice before the big day. Everyone was dressed up, smiling, and laughing, but for me, the air felt heavy. Claire floated around the hall like a queen, accepting praise from relatives and old family friends. She carried herself with elegance, but I couldn't stop watching the cracks in her performance, quick glances at the door, anxious checks on her phone, and whispered conversations with strangers who didn't seem like guests. During the rehearsal dinner, Claire leaned close to me and whispered words no one else heard. You don't belong here, Joe. This isn't your place. Her smile never faltered, so no one noticed the venom in her tone. I clenched my fists but said nothing. Speaking up would only backfire again. Mark made a toast, thanking everyone, except me. He raised his glass proudly, calling Claire the best thing that ever happened to him. The family cheered. I stayed seated, the outsider in a room full of blind admirers. As I looked around, I realized something painful, I had lost their trust completely. Claire had won their hearts. But I was determined she would not win the final battle. The wedding morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. Guests filled the pews, whispering about how perfect the day was. Mark stood at the altar, grinning from ear to ear, while Claire, radiant in white, played her role flawlessly. I sat in the back, uneasy. Every instinct told me to stop this, but my voice no longer carried weight in this family. Still, I couldn't just watch. When the officiant asked if anyone had objections, my heart pounded. I stood, my voice trembling but clear. Stop this wedding. Claire isn't who you think she is. Gasps filled the hall. All eyes turned to me. Mark's face twisted in rage. Claire buried her face in her hands, acting wounded. Enough. Mark roared. You're jealous, Joe. You can't stand to see me happy. Two ushers grabbed my arms, dragging me toward the door. My parents' eyes burned with disappointment, and the guests murmured in disgust. Claire's voice carried over the whispers, calm and cruel. Maybe it's best if Joe leaves. He's only here to ruin things. The doors slammed shut behind me. Humiliated and abandoned, I stood outside alone. But the day wasn't over. The storm was coming. I stood outside the church, the sound of music and laughter muffled behind heavy wooden doors. My chest burned with shame. Cast out, humiliated in front of everyone I knew, Mark had made sure I was nothing more than a bitter brother in their eyes. As I paced the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was a relative calling to scold me again. Instead, the voice on the other end was calm, firm, and official. Mr. Morgan. This is Special Agent Daniels with the FBI. We need to talk about Claire. For a moment, I thought it was a cruel prank. But the seriousness in his tone froze me in place. What about her? I asked cautiously. She's under federal investigation. Fraud, identity theft, and suspected involvement in a larger criminal network. We believe you've already noticed unusual behavior. My mind raced. Everything I'd seen, her late calls, the documents, the lies, it all clicked. The agent continued, we need your cooperation. Stay where you are. And don't go back inside. The call ended, leaving me staring at the church doors. Inside, they celebrated a fairy tale. Outside, I stood with the truth, dangerous and undeniable. Minutes after the call, a black sedan pulled up across the street. Two men in dark suits stepped out, flashing badges before I could even ask. Special Agent Daniels introduced himself, his partner close behind. "We've been tracking Claire for over a year," Daniels said. "Her real name isn't Claire. She's used several identities across different states." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "What does she want with my brother?" Daniels pulled out a file, flipping it open. Inside were photographs of Claire, different names, different men, the same cold smile. Money. Status. She marries, drains accounts, and disappears. Your brother is her biggest target yet. My stomach twisted. I thought of Mark showing off his accounts, his trust fund, the family properties. He had handed her everything she needed on a silver platter. Daniel's eyes locked on mine. "We know you've noticed things. Your observations matter. Tonight, we'll make our move." I looked back at the church. Laughter echoed faintly through the doors. Mark thought he was living a dream, but in truth, he was minutes away from disaster. For the first time, I felt something other than humiliation. I felt vindication. Sitting in my car, I replayed every moment of the past weeks. Claire's subtle comments, her insistence on controlling Mark's schedule, the sudden trips she always needed to take alone. I had brushed them off, thinking she was just a demanding fiancée. But now, seeing her files, her patterns, I realized I had been blind. Mark's excessive generosity, the way he flaunted assets, it all fit. She wasn't in love, she was hunting. I gritted my teeth, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. How could Mark, my brother, not see this? Every warning I'd whispered, every concern I'd raised, it was ignored. And yet, it wasn't too late. Agent Daniels leaned in from the passenger seat, noticing my tension. "We need someone who knows him, someone he trusts," he said. "You can guide us through tonight. Help us anticipate her moves." A spark lit inside me. This was my chance, not just to stop Claire, but to reclaim the respect I'd lost. I straightened my shoulders, gripping the steering wheel. Mark had humiliated me at his wedding. Tonight, I'd take back the power, quietly and decisively. The countdown had begun. The evening air was thick with tension as we approached the grand estate. Every step echoed my resolve. Mark was oblivious, distracted by last-minute wedding preparations, laughing at Claire's demands. I clenched my fists, feeling a cold determination wash over me. Agent Daniels whispered the plan. "We move carefully. She's prepared for anyone, but not for someone who knows her patterns." I nodded, scanning the house for cameras, exits, and the subtle traps Claire might have set. Inside, the room shimmered with flowers, candles, and guests unaware of the storm about to hit. I spotted her immediately, Claire, radiant in white, smiling at oblivious family members, completely unaware that her carefully built facade was about to crumble. I felt a surge of calm confidence. Years of being dismissed, ignored, and humiliated had led to this precise moment. Every hint I'd gathered, every observation, had guided me here. Agent Daniels gave a barely noticeable nod. I exhaled slowly, then stepped forward. Every movement was deliberate, every glance calculated. Tonight, Mark would see the truth. And Claire, she would realize, far too late, that the game had already been set, and she had no escape. The wedding would never be the same. Claire laughed, tossing her head as she spoke to Mark, unaware that everything around her was about to collapse. I stayed in the shadows, watching every movement, memorizing every detail. Years of meticulous planning had led to this night, and nothing could go wrong. Agent Daniels whispered, "Position set. Timing is key." I nodded, gripping the envelope hidden in my coat. Inside were documents, recordings, and proof of Claire's long trail of lies, fraud, and manipulation. Every secret she thought buried was now poised to surface. Mark's smile faltered as I stepped forward. "Claire, we need to talk," I said, voice calm but carrying weight. The room fell silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Guests stared, sensing a shift they didn't understand. Claire's expression froze. What is this?" she stammered. Her confidence wavered, eyes darting around for support, but the crowd's gaze was fixed on her. I handed the envelope to Agent Daniels. The documents were reviewed quickly, and the truth hit like a tidal wave. Claire's schemes, manipulations, and lies were exposed in full. Within minutes, the wedding atmosphere transformed from celebration to chaos. Shocked whispers rippled through the room as the FBI stepped forward. The trap had worked perfectly, Claire's world was collapsing, and Mark had no idea how close he had come to being betrayed for good. The room erupted into chaos. Guests screamed and scattered as Agent Daniels and his team moved in. Claire's eyes widened in disbelief, her carefully crafted facade crumbling with each step. She lunged toward the documents, but it was too late. The FBI had all they needed. "Claire Morgan," an agent announced, voice booming, "you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice." The words hung in the air like a storm. Claire's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Panic replaced arrogance. Mark stumbled back, shock painted across his face. He had no idea about her double life, the schemes she had run behind his back, or the lies she had fed him for years. His perfect wedding had transformed into a nightmare in mere minutes. I stayed calm, watching the scene unfold. Every betrayal, every insult, every humiliation I had endured paled compared to the satisfaction of seeing justice delivered silently, flawlessly. No yelling. No revenge speeches. Just truth, exposure, and the law stepping in. As Claire was led away in handcuffs, Mark turned to me, confusion and gratitude in his eyes. I had no idea," he whispered. I smiled slightly. "Now you know." The wedding would never be the same, but neither would Claire. After the chaos, the wedding hall felt empty, even with guests lingering in shock. Mark sat quietly at the head table, his hands trembling as he tried to process everything. The bride he trusted, the plans he cherished, gone in an instant. I stayed nearby, keeping my distance but watching carefully. He needed space, but he also needed support. "Are you okay?" I asked softly, approaching him. His eyes met mine, gratitude and confusion mixing. I don't know," he admitted. "I never suspected anything." I shook my head. "You did nothing wrong, Mark. You were deceived, yes, but now, we can fix this." We started making calls, checking that the vendors hadn't been defrauded and that refunds could be issued. Slowly, I guided him through conversations with caterers, photographers, and the venue manager. Each interaction rebuilt a bit of control that Claire had stolen. It wasn't just about salvaging a wedding. It was about restoring trust, safety, and dignity. Mark finally exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. For the first time that day, he smiled, small, shaky, but real. Seeing him regain his composure, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The nightmare Claire caused was ending, and a new beginning was forming. The next morning, I dug deeper into Claire's past. Mark had trusted her blindly, but every red flag I'd noticed earlier now seemed like glaring warnings. I started by checking her social media accounts, old emails, and any public records. Why would she hide all of this? Mark muttered, leaning over my shoulder. I didn't answer immediately. Some truths needed careful unraveling. A pattern emerged, multiple fake identities, small frauds, and suspicious connections to people involved in illegal schemes. Each discovery made Mark's jaw tighten. "I can't believe I never saw it," he whispered. I reminded him gently, "She's good at hiding, Mark. But that's why I'm here." We documented everything carefully, capturing screenshots, saving emails, and cross-referencing her known associates. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. Claire had been manipulating him for months, maybe years. When I finally showed Mark the compiled evidence, his eyes widened in disbelief. He realized that not only had she tried to ruin his wedding, but she had also carefully constructed a web of lies and deceit around him. For the first time, he understood the full scope of her betrayal, and why it would take more than shock to bring her down. After uncovering Claire's lies, it was time to turn the tables. Mark sat quietly, eyes haunted, while I laid out a strategy. "We need evidence, witnesses, and timing," I explained. "This can't be messy or impulsive." We started by identifying her associates, friends who had unknowingly helped her schemes. I made discreet calls, arranged meetings, and gathered statements. Each conversation revealed more of her manipulations, confirming that her lies were deeper than we had imagined. Mark's anger simmered, but I reminded him to stay patient. "Revenge isn't about rage, it's about precision," I said. Next, we secured digital proof, emails, bank records, and chat logs. I hired a private investigator to track her movements without alerting her. Every step had to be calculated, one mistake could ruin everything. We also set up a safe network to protect Mark. Claire had left traces everywhere, but with careful monitoring, we could anticipate her next moves. As night fell, Mark finally breathed. "I can't believe I waited so long to see this," he murmured. I smiled, confident. The web she had spun around him was about to unravel, and soon, the world would see her for who she truly was. The morning air felt electric as we executed the first part of our plan. Claire thought she was untouchable, but her arrogance was her weakness. I made the first discreet moves, sending hints to her associates that her schemes wouldn't remain hidden. Mark stayed close, watching silently as I coordinated the effort. Our goal was clear: expose her lies without giving her time to react. Small cracks began appearing in her carefully crafted image. Friends questioned her motives, clients reconsidered agreements, and whispers followed her wherever she went. We timed everything perfectly. An unexpected audit of her finances revealed discrepancies, and emails we had obtained painted a clear picture of her deception. I ensured these documents reached the right people whose influence could topple her carefully built reputation. Claire's confidence began to falter. Calls went unanswered, meetings got cancelled, and rumors spread faster than she could control. Mark's satisfaction grew quietly, a mix of relief and anticipation. By evening, I could see the change. Her once commanding presence had weakened, and she didn't yet know we were behind it. Patience had paid off, and the first strike was just the beginning. The game had begun, and Claire would soon realize she had underestimated us entirely. Claire's world started unraveling faster than she could imagine. Every connection she had carefully nurtured now questioned her loyalty and honesty. I watched from the sidelines as her panic grew, subtle but undeniable. Mark and I stayed strategic, releasing information in small, calculated doses. A hint here, a leaked message there, enough to make her stumble but not enough for her to trace it back to us. Every move was deliberate. Every reaction from her confirmed she was losing control. Her assistant, once fiercely loyal, hesitated before responding to her orders. Friends whispered in hallways, casting suspicious glances. The foundation of Claire's influence, built on manipulation and intimidation, was starting to crack. I felt a mix of vindication and caution. The first strike had succeeded, but I needed patience. The next phase required careful planning. Timing was everything. A single misstep could alert her, and then everything we had worked for might collapse. Mark reminded me to remain composed. "She doesn't know the storm is coming," he said quietly. By nightfall, Claire's composure faltered in a meeting, her voice shaky, her decisions questioned. The pressure was mounting. Soon, the walls would close in completely, and she wouldn't have anywhere to hide. The perfect moment arrived unexpectedly. Claire was giving a speech at a high-profile industry event, full of influential clients and media attention. Her confidence was a mask, thinly veiling the chaos I had sown behind the scenes. I had spent weeks preparing for this. Every piece of incriminating evidence we had collected, every leaked email and manipulated record, pointed toward one undeniable truth. And now, in front of a room full of people, the pressure would force her hand. Midway through her presentation, she faltered. Words stumbled from her mouth, sentences missing their mark. Screens behind her, prepped quietly by Mark, flashed subtle but undeniable proof of her manipulations. The audience gasped, whispers spreading like wildfire. Claire's face drained of color. She tried to regain control, but every attempt was met with confusion or disbelief. Journalists frantically typed notes, capturing every falter, while clients exchanged worried glances. From my vantage point, I felt both triumph and a strange pang of pity. She had built her empire on fear and deceit, and now the world was finally seeing it. By the time the applause ended, Claire was crumbling. The public had witnessed her vulnerability, and her reign of control had begun to collapse. Claire's world unraveled faster than I could have imagined. The media storm from the industry event spread online within minutes. Videos of her faltering speech went viral, accompanied by screenshots of every incriminating email and document we had exposed. She called frantic meetings with her closest allies, but nobody dared fully support her anymore. Trust evaporated overnight. Investors questioned their involvement, clients canceled contracts, and colleagues whispered behind closed doors. Her carefully constructed empire teetered on the edge of collapse. Behind the scenes, Claire's desperation became almost palpable. She tried to reach me through mutual contacts, sending desperate pleas and veiled threats. But I stayed calm, observing quietly. Every misstep she made only tightened the hold of justice we had built. Her personal life, too, began to crack. Friends turned away, fearing association with a public scandal. The pressures she thought she could control now consumed her completely. I knew one final push could make the difference between her survival and total defeat. Claire's arrogance had blinded her, her manipulations had left traces, and now the world saw the truth. Soon, there would be no escape for her. The countdown to her ultimate reckoning had begun, and I was ready to witness it. The morning headlines hit like a tidal wave. Every major news outlet had picked up the story: corporate scandal rocks industry, CEO under investigation. Claire's face stared back from screens across the country, her once pristine image now tarnished beyond repair. Emails, contracts, and insider communications we had collected were now public knowledge. Shareholders demanded answers. Regulatory agencies opened formal inquiries. Investors pulled funding in droves. The empire she had built with manipulation and deceit began to crumble, and there was no one left to save her. I watched the chaos unfold from a distance, keeping my identity anonymous in the coverage. Claire's calls and frantic messages went unanswered, each one more desperate than the last. Her staff avoided her, colleagues whispered behind her back, and even her closest confidants began to abandon her. Social media erupted with ridicule and outrage, and every miscalculated decision she had ever made was dissected for all to see. The public was relentless, hungry for justice and scandal, and I had given them the truth. For the first time, Claire realized her empire could not withstand exposure. Her carefully curated world was gone, and the walls she had built around herself were cracking. The stage was set for her final confrontation. I was ready. Claire finally showed up at the annual industry gala, trying to appear unshaken, but everyone could see the cracks. Her usual confident smile faltered, and her eyes darted nervously across the room. I stayed hidden in plain sight, blending with the crowd, letting the tension build. The whispers followed her like shadows. Executives and investors avoided her gaze, murmuring about the scandal and her misdeeds. The room felt smaller, suffocating, as she realized the world she had controlled was slipping through her fingers. I knew she sensed someone was watching, someone who had orchestrated every revelation, but she had no proof. When she approached the podium to deliver a speech, the audience erupted with interruptions. Phones captured every tremor in her voice, every hesitation. Security politely ushered her away as murmurs turned into audible criticism. I remained calm, savoring every moment of poetic justice. She had humiliated me, tried to destroy my reputation, and ignored every warning. Now, the world watched her unravel, powerless to stop it. Later, in the shadows of the gala, our eyes met briefly. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. The final chapter was still ahead, but Claire knew the battle had been lost. Her empire was gone, and she had only herself to blame. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. Every major outlet had a headline: FBI investigates wedding scandal, bride under scrutiny. Claire's carefully constructed image of power crumbled in hours. Social media mocked her, former allies turned their backs, and investors withdrew funds before anyone could blink. I watched from a distance, keeping my presence invisible. Each headline felt like a quiet, personal victory. She had always believed that arrogance and charm could shield her from consequences. Now, the very world she manipulated so effortlessly was turning against her. Even her closest friends avoided her calls. Lawyers advised caution, the FBI's investigation was intensifying. She was no longer untouchable. At the office, her assistant resigned without notice, leaving her scrambling for answers. Documents she had buried resurfaced online, exposing months of deceit, fraud, and betrayal. Every secret she had hidden under layers of lies now hovered in public view. And yet, I felt no rush to confront her directly. Revenge was not about humiliation alone, it was about letting her feel the weight of every action, every betrayal, every insult she had thrown my way. Claire's empire was falling, her pride shattered, and the woman who once commanded respect now faced isolation. The final reckoning was near. The day Claire's trial was announced, I knew the moment I had been waiting for had arrived. Everything I had planned, the evidence, the timing, the silence, was aligned perfectly. I didn't need to be in the spotlight, I only needed to ensure the truth was undeniable. I handed over the final batch of documents to the authorities, contracts she had forged, emails proving threats and bribes, and bank transfers showing embezzlement. Each paper was a nail in the coffin of her reputation. The FBI agents double-checked, eyes widening as they saw the extent of her schemes. Outside, reporters gathered, sensing a scandal of historic proportions. Cameras flashed, and social media erupted, dissecting every revelation. Claire tried to maintain control, but her fear was palpable. And then it happened, the agents returned with cuffs. She struggled, screamed, and begged, but no one listened. Her empire collapsed around her in an instant. From a distance, I allowed myself a small smile. Revenge had never been about violence or loud confrontation, it was about precision, patience, and watching her carefully constructed life crumble under the weight of her own deceit. Finally, justice was served. Finally, I had my closure. The news of Claire's arrest spread like wildfire. Every channel, every social media feed, carried the story. Headlines screamed about her crimes, the embezzlement, and the shocking betrayal at my brother's wedding. People I didn't even know reached out, congratulating me silently, praising the truth finally coming to light. My brother, Kevin, avoided my calls at first. He couldn't face me, couldn't believe that the woman he had trusted had been living a lie. When he finally showed up, guilt and fear were written all over his face. I had no idea, he stammered. I didn't respond. Actions, not excuses, mattered now. Friends and neighbors whispered about my patience, my calm, and my ability to let the law do the work. No one had expected it to end like this. I had never sought attention or glory. All I had wanted was justice, the satisfaction of seeing deceit punished. Watching Claire's empire crumble, seeing her name dragged through headlines, knowing her carefully built life was gone, it was more than victory. It was proof that silence, strategy, and persistence could overcome arrogance and betrayal. Finally, I could breathe. Life was reclaiming its rhythm, and I had emerged stronger, smarter, and victorious. The wedding fiasco, Claire's arrest, and the months of quiet planning were behind me. Life had changed, but so had I. I wasn't the same person who had been humiliated, excluded, and overlooked. I had learned patience, strategy, and the power of letting truth speak louder than anger. Kevin and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. He had been naive, blinded by love, but he now understood the depth of betrayal he'd nearly ignored. We shared quiet moments, laughter, and even plans for new family gatherings. No resentment lingered, only clarity and respect. I focused on my own future. With the time and energy I had once spent worrying about Claire, I started a small consultancy, helping people protect themselves from scams and deception. Every client I assisted reminded me of how valuable patience, intelligence, and integrity truly were. At night, I often reflected on the journey, the humiliation, the planning, the justice. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Victory didn't come from revenge alone, it came from strategy, perseverance, and staying true to myself. The FBI had taken Claire, my brother had learned the truth, and I had taken control of my life. The past was settled. The future was mine. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what part hit you the hardest. Thanks for watching.